Welcome back to the Tan and J-Man show on this January 27th, just gorgeous day. Tanner is not with us tonight because he is battling an illness, so his father, Big E as I like to call him, Arik Lee, is with us in studio. Before we get into anything, it was a sad day yesterday in the sports world with the passing of Kobe Bryant in a helicopter accident along with 8 other people, including his daughter, Gigi. Why don't you just talk about Kobe a little bit? I don't know if you watch the NBA more than I do, but Kobe was an icon, and it's a pretty sad day in really the sports world.
Yeah, I was over here watching the IU basketball game with Tanner, and I didn't know the effect that Kobe had on your generation.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought of Kobe as a top 10 player. I didn't know he was so worldly recognized as a superstar. He was originally a 13th pick in the NBA draft as a 17-year-old by the Charlotte, I believe it was Hornets in those days, or was Bobcats. Got traded for Vlade Divac.
Vlade Divac, yeah.
I think that was a pretty good trade for the Lakers.
Not bad.
You know, as funny as a basketball player, his very first playoffs, they were playing the Utah Jazz, and he took 2 shots in the last 30 seconds and airballed them both.
Oh.
And I can remember all the heat with all the older players on the team and the 18-year-old by that time jumping up and trying to knock these 2 shots down, and everybody was criticizing him. But the one thing I will remember about him, he probably was on the Mount Rushmore of the most clutch athletes I've ever seen. I was trying to think of others in other sports that you just knew were going to beat you in the last seconds. And, I think there's a little of that in Tom Brady. And before him, Joe Montana. There's 2 quarterbacks that just seemed to, and Roger Staubach to go way back, but guys that could bring teams back. And then obviously Tiger Woods in golf. But, there's not many athletes you can think of that when it was clutch time came through time and time and time again. He obviously had 81 points in an NBA game, the second most ever. And even on his last game in his 20th year after Achilles injury 3 years prior, had 60 points to finish his career against those same Utah Jazz that he started his career in the playoffs. So, Kobe could speak 3 or 4 languages. I believe on his SATs, if I remember right, he was either in the low 1200s or something. He was a different guy.
He seemed like a great father as well. I mean, he loved his girls. And just the fact that he was with Gigi, taking her to a basketball game, tells you all you need to know about him. I mean, his 3 daughters and his wife, Vanessa. I mean, I don't even know how I would be able to deal with a death of that magnitude. So our thoughts and prayers go out to him, to his family. But as he said about his clutchness, the fact that he was willing to take those 2 shots at 18 years old,
right.
I mean, he was ready for it, and he didn't care if he missed.
Right. And one other thing I had thought about Kobe today, he's one of the few athletes, I think, that was not well-liked early in his career that became someone everybody liked. Obviously, I'm a golf nut. Jack Nicklaus was kind of the same way. He started out, and everybody liked Arnold Palmer and didn't want Fat Boy from Ohio beating him. But, by the time he was done, he was one of the most likable athletes in history. And Kobe kind of became that. When Kobe was early, he was with Shaq, and the 2 of them didn't get along real well, even though they won 3 championships together. And he kind of forced Shaq out, and a lot of the population liked the big old happy Shaq, and he was the fun guy. But, Kobe kind of changed the whole persona of himself over his 20 years. So, yeah, it was a sad day for the whole world, really.
Yeah, and I mean there was 7 more people that also were killed, including a legendary junior college baseball coach, John Altobelli, who, with his wife and his youngest daughter, both perished in the wreck. I mean, he leaves behind a son, I think 1 other daughter as well. But as I said, I just can't even imagine having to deal with that. It's going to be tough for a long time. I saw today the Clippers and Lakers have postponed their game for tomorrow night. So that's That's a nice tribute, I guess you could say. And I mean, so many people or so many teams yesterday took 24-second shot clock violations to start off the game, and an 8-second violation, just throwing the ball away, or at half court as well. But just a sad day, and the world will move on eventually, but right now it is a tough time. I know yesterday Mike Breen said during a game that he didn't even want to be there to commentate that game. So,
yeah, much like Michael, Kobe was one of the few NBA stars that had two different numbers in his career. So 24 and 8 being the two numbers. And
I actually just got a text from Tanner right now, who is sitting upstairs. He said, retired 24 and 8 forever, kind of like a Jackie Robinson tribute in baseball.
And Dallas has already done that for 24. So
right. So want to move on to our regularly scheduled program. This episode is brought to you by The Dam Landing. Whether you want an epic burger, hand-tossed pizza, hand-breaded tenderloin, seafood, craft beer, or handcrafted cocktail, The Dam Landing is the place to be. The Dam Landing is a bar and grill located on beautiful Lake Manitou that focuses on freshness and quality. Coming soon is the Dam Smoke, which will be available on weekends and feature barbecue and steaks. In addition, you can wash it down with one of their 16 beers on tap, including a constant rotation of today's micro brews and domestic flavors, or a handcrafted cocktail made using fresh ingredients. Take in the fantastic views of Lake Manitou in their beer garden or outdoor bar area. Whether it be boat or wheels, the Dam Landing is the place to be, located at 1305 Ewing Road in Rochester. I have a trivia question for you today.
Okay.
Kofi Cockburn, my Kofi Cockburn, beast of the Big Ten, won his 7th Freshman of the Week award today, which is tied for second most all time. Who has the most Freshman of the Week awards?
How long has there been a Freshman of the Week?
I was hoping you would not ask this because it might give it away.
Oh.
The award started in 2010-2011 season.
All right, I'm going to write that down. Wow, that's a lot of Freshmen of the Weeks.
The player who has the most has 12,
wow,
which is just insane. I mean, that will probably never be broken in the Big Ten. But Birdie Bogey is brought to you by Noble Gnome LLC, fresh, locally grown, nutrient-dense produce from Bryce and Katie Romine of Mentone, Indiana. Like them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram, check out their website, noblegnomellc.com. Now it's time for some On This Day to get educated in the world of sports on January 27th. In 1967, the New Orleans Saints signed their first player. Can you name who that player was?
Was it James Taylor?
It was not. It was Paige Cothran.
Or he, sometimes known as Paige Cothran.
Kicker.
Well, of course.
Who would sign their kicker first? I don't understand.
Yeah, especially the legendary Paige Cothran.
1969, Chuck Noll is named head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, youngest coach in NFL history at the time. Had a pretty good career.
He did all right.
Yeah, all right. 1970, the Pittsburgh Steelers took Terry Bradshaw in the first round. Most overrated quarterback in history?
Yeah, he's right up there. Did you know who he was a backup at college for 1 year?
It was Phil Robertson, wasn't it?
That's correct.
From the Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty dude.
1973, UCLA's basketball team won its 61st consecutive game, NCAA record. I assume that's still the record, too.
They got it up to 88.
Good Lord.
But Connecticut has it for women. They went upper 90s, but 88 still holds. Notre Dame dropped them, actually.
I remember that.
And they also stopped their 60-game streak a few years earlier.
That was back when Notre Dame was actually good at basketball.
That's correct.
1982, this was a big day in Cubs land. Philadelphia Phillies traded Larry Bowa and Ryan Sandberg to the Cubs for Ivan DeJesus.
That was a good trade for the Cubs.
Not bad. Sandberg won MVP. Was it just 2 years later in 84?
One of my favorite Cub teams ever until 2016.
Yeah, 2016 was pretty good. Who was it that had the ball going between his legs in 84? Was it Leon Durham?
Yeah, Bull Durham.
That's
yeah, that was a toughie.
That's classic Cubs.
Padres.
Yeah.
They were up 2-0.
2-0.
In those days, the team with the best record didn't necessarily get home field.
Mm-hmm.
So the Cubs get 2, and then they go out to San Diego, and Steve Garvey hit a home run and beat them in Game 4.
I still hear people on Twitter just complaining about Steve Garvey.
Yeah.
I mean, that was 38 years ago now. And
just another reason to hate Michigan State, where he went to college.
Let's see here. Not a whole lot has gone on. Super Bowl, what would that be? 25, 1991. Can you name what happened in that Super Bowl?
91?
Yes.
Is that the year Scott Norwood missed the 47-yard field goal?
It is, wide right.
Yeah.
It's the New York Giants.
The Whitney Houston game, you remember she sang the national anthem. It was when Iran, there was a potential war going on. It was very famous. Look it up.
That was before I was born.
Yeah.
Can you name the MVP of that game?
Otis Anderson.
Otis Anderson. I didn't give you that trivia question today.
I would have had a better chance than this one you gave me, but
really, I think
I've got somebody written.
You
down.
should get it.
I think I might have it.
Let's see. Man, there's just not a whole lot of gone on. Nothing.
Okay.
2019 NFL Pro Bowl. Can you name the MVP of last year's Pro Bowl?
I can't.
It was Patrick Mahomes and Jamal Adams were co-MVPs.
Yeah, I couldn't have got that.
No. So keeping with the NFL, we have a pretty big game on Sunday.
We do.
You want to preview it?
Yeah, sure.
Got the Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. Do the 49ers have the best defense in football this year, statistically?
Well, I think they have when their whole front four is healthy. They were out 2 guys there for 4 or 5 games, and their numbers got inflated. I know New Orleans threw 46 on them, but yeah.
And they still somehow found a way to win it.
Yeah.
Niners did.
Yeah. Jimmy G, he can play. Mm-hmm. He's not a top 5 quarterback, but he's better than average.
He's probably the worst starting quarter. I wouldn't say he's a bad quarterback, as you said. But is he probably the worst starting quarterback in a Super Bowl since that version of Peyton Manning back in 2016 was really bad?
It's sacrilegious in this room, but he was.
And I mean, Flacco was okay. I know you're a Flacco.
He's okay.
Flacco backer.
He does have an interesting record. He's got the most NFL road wins in playoff history.
Wow.
Eli Manning second, who just retired, by the way.
He did.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting Hall of Fame.
I was going to ask you, is he a Hall of Famer?
He'll make it, but if he didn't have 2 Super Bowls, he would not.
I agree. He was right at 500 in his career.
Right.
He threw for over 50,000 yards, but in today's NFL, that's not.
Right.
If you just play long enough, you'll hit it. I mean, Jameis Winston's probably going to hit 50,000 sometime in his career. Maybe if he gets a starting job somewhere.
Well, Eli did. Probably Jameis is most like Eli of any quarterback because Eli led the league in interceptions 3 times. But sometimes that's misleading because there's only about half the quarterbacks that are good enough to start all 16 games.
Right.
Usually if you're leading the league in interceptions in Game 6, they yank you. But Eli was good enough not to get yanked. But, yeah, he'll be an interesting case. But
And his career did not end great either.
No.
I've been on record saying he should have retired 3 or 4 years ago, and he just kind of hung on. I do agree he'll get in eventually, and he might even be a first ballot guy just because 2 Super Bowl championships hold weight. And, I mean, it also doesn't help that his brother is one of the greatest ever.
Right.
And they'll look at that as well. And I thought it was funny. They asked Peyton to kind of talk about his brother, and I thought it was funny. He listed Eli as his 3rd favorite player. He said, behind my dad and Dan Marino, Eli was my favorite player. So
yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I caught that too. To go back and answer your question though on the worst quarterback since, you might go back to Jake Delhomme for Carolina.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was somebody. There's always something. You're right. Flacco was pretty. Kaepernick had a great year. Flacco had a great playoffs. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Can you name the only quarterback to have won 2 Super Bowls who is not in the Hall of Fame?
Not in the Hall of Fame.
And is eligible. Obviously, Brady and Peyton aren't eligible yet.
2 Super Bowls. course, Aikman's in.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He played back for what was then called the Stanford Indians before they changed to the Cardinal.
I don't know.
Jim Plunkett.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just a little.
That's an interesting factoid.
Yeah, I kind of threw that out there.
So as I said, we have the Chiefs and the Niners. Chiefs, I mean, they've been rolling here after they need to stop getting down by 14, 17, 20 in the first quarter, especially against defense like the Niners, who can just get after you with Bosa, and they have Eric Armstead on the other side. The defense is nasty. Their defensive coordinator, what the heck's his name? I forget what his name is. He's done a great job. He almost got canned last year because their defense just wasn't very good. But he's turned them around, and now he's a hot candidate for a job and will be at least for next year. Are all the jobs filled? I think Tanner and I talked about this last
They are, I believe.
week. Unless, of course, something happens. I mean, we saw in baseball where Carlos Beltran and A.J. Hinch both get fired, as did Alex Cora as well in the middle of January.
Right.
So as long as nothing crazy happens,
the Chiefs probably have the fastest set of skill players in the history of the NFL, and you have a guy like Mahomes who can get a little bit of time, and he probably throws 10 balls a game over 20 yards.
Right.
And if he just hits on 3 of them, you're just lucky if Hill doesn't take it for 70.
Mm-hmm.
And what is funny is probably the 2 best tight ends in football are in this game. George Kittle was an afterthought in college.
Right.
I don't even remember he played for Iowa.
He was a block first guy. My mom's side of the family are huge Iowa fans, and my uncle always said that Kittle was nothing. He was like their 3rd best tight end on the roster, and here he is as one of the best tight ends in the NFL now.
Boy, Iowa does throw some tight ends in the NFL though. Starting back with Dallas Clark, and then they've had
like Scott Chandler. Was he one?
Yeah, the kid Fant this year, and then they had
Hawkinson.
Yeah, and then they had another guy. They've just had a lot of NFL tight ends.
Give me a score prediction.
Well, I'm going to go with my heart over my head. I think San Francisco 27-24. I think it's going to be a good game. We'll see if they can run the ball. Kansas City's defense has been much improved. Mm-hmm. It's funny, Kansas City beat the AFC South to get here, which isn't a great division, but they beat Tennessee and Houston. And the 49ers, they beat the NFC North, the Vikings and the Packers. So I don't think either one of them faced their toughest competition they could have in their conference. I think Baltimore was the best team in the AFC, and I think, I don't know, maybe New Orleans would have been a better matchup, but 2 really good teams.
I have kind of compared this Chiefs defense to the Colts defense back in 2006. They were awful for a majority of the year, but then got hot and were awesome in the postseason. I mean, they held the Ravens. I think they have Steve McNair then.
They did. It was like 15-6 game, 5 field goals to 2. And, with about 3 weeks to go in that season, Maurice Jones-Drew ran for about 499 yards, it seemed like, on Indianapolis.
I think Fred Taylor ran for over 100 as well in that same
game. It was ridiculous. Yeah. I think they gave up 380 yards rushing, and then here it was. Of course, when they did get to the Super Bowl, that might have been the worst quarterback ever to start in the Super Bowl, and Rex Grossman.
Oh, yeah. Completely.
My God, he was awful.
Since then, we've had like Roethlisberger, Kurt Warner, Manning, Breeze, Rodgers.
Well, you think
Brady,
in AFC
Russell
alone,
Wilson.
Brady's had 9 appearances, Manning 4, and Roethlisberger 3. So that's 16 of probably the last 18.
Right.
I think Gannon was in there once, and Flacco was in there once.
And now Mahomes.
And I think he's closer to the other 3 than he is Gannon or Flacco.
Didn't Gannon win the MVP that year?
He did.
He had a great year.
Yeah, he did.
he didn't have a good career though. He just had that one unbelievable year.
Yeah, he was a Delaware guy.
Really?
Him and Joe Flacco both went to Delaware.
Flacco started his career at Pitt, right?
Yeah, couldn't get the starting job.
Who was it? It was that was it Tyler Palco, that lefty that said a bad word on national television after they beat
Notre Dame.
They beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That was great.
Which was worth it.
I'm taking the... Actually, you know what? This will be the J-Man's Book It prediction of the week. I think the Kansas City Chiefs will win this ball game. It will be interesting. As I said, their defense has been pretty good here lately. Held Derrick Henry to, I think, 70 yards rushing.
69
yards rushing. The defense is playing great. Offense will score points. I know Niners have a really good D, but Patrick Mahomes is too good. And I want to bring this up as well. Tara and I talked about it last week. I think Patrick Mahomes is the most physically gifted quarterback to ever play in the NFL. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think I can disagree. I mean, he has a lot of the same traits as Rodgers, except he's quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's got a little stronger arm. You know, Rodgers is now 37, but yeah.
The way Mahomes can create an angle to throw for himself is something I've never seen, with him sidearming balls and throwing across his body. And he has probably, I don't know if he has the strongest arm in NFL history, but probably the strongest I've ever seen. I know Favre could throw end zone to end zone.
Right. Well, so they said, I was thinking about Mahomes. They kept saying, well, if he doesn't win this year, he'll be back. This is year 3. But the team they most remind me of is the early 80s Dolphins, as far as Duper and Clayton are a lot like Hill and
small,
number
fast.
17. And, Marino threw 48 touchdowns that year, which in those days was like 12 above the NFL record that had been there forever. And, Marino never got back. So sometimes you got to take advantage of that one opportunity. Lamar Jackson's not going anywhere, and he may have Baltimore tougher than nails. And so we'll see. But
it'll be an interesting matchup with Richard Sherman and Tyreek Hill, because Sherman is one of these slower corners. In the league. He's huge, but he's going to have to. I don't know what his strategy will be against a guy like Hill. You almost have to double team him and hope your safety can get back, but Hill will blow right by him. Yeah,
maybe it better although he never goes inside, is put him on Kelsey, but I don't think that would happen because Sherman is big. I mean, he got burnt pretty bad on a long pass by the Packers with Adams, and although Adams is super quick, he's no Hill.
No. So the J-Man's Book of Prediction of the Week is brought to you by Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance Agent Travis Watchering. For life, home, auto, renters, business, workers' comp, and farm, contact Travis at 219-869-4561 and also at travis.watchering@infb.com. Also, next weekend is the Hall of Fame vote for the NFL. So I'm going to go through this list. Of course, we have Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher have been elected already. But I'm going to go through this list.
And Harold Carmichael, who was an old player for the Eagles.
Was he a tight end?
He was actually a 6'8" split end, and they picked him over Drew Pearson, and they showed a lot of pictures of Drew Pearson, who was a famous cowboy. He was pretty upset about it. So,
Stevie Atwater.
I say no. You're going to name 15. I think they take anywhere from 4 to 7, if I remember right. So I have my option to say change at the end, but right now, since I'm going to leave it around 5 or 6, I'm going to say no.
Carl Banks.
No.
I don't know who that is.
He was linebacker with Lawrence Taylor on the great Giants team. Oh. He was the third linebacker. Harry Carson's already in. LT's already in.
Rondé Barber.
Yes, but not this year.
He was really good safety.
He might make it. He'd be 5th or 6th on the list probably.
I don't know how long he's been on the ballot or out of football.
Yeah.
He's probably been out 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah, he was a good player.
Tony Baselli.
I think he's in.
Really?
Yeah.
Offensive lineman for
Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm. Isaac Bruce.
They always take one receiver, it seems like. And I think they're going to have to take another guy over him. So I'm going to say no.
His teammate, Torrey Holt.
I don't think it's going to be Torrey Holt either.
Big game Holt.
Yeah.
Leroy Butler.
No.
Was he a Packer?
Yeah.
Was he a defensive back?
Yeah, number 36.
That's right. Okay, never mind. Alan Faneca.
Yes. Pittsburgh Steelers lineman. They like to put the offensive lineman in. I think a couple of them are going to make it this year.
Steve Hutchinson.
Ooh, another lineman.
He was a good one.
Let me replace Alan Faneca with Steve Hutchinson.
All right. Steve Hutchinson, he was a Seahawk.
Yeah.
And then he was traded to Minnesota.
He played for the Vikings a little bit, yeah.
He was awesome back in the mid-late 2000s.
I'm surprised he's not already in.
Edgerrin James.
I don't think so. He's if there was a hall of really, really good.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Yeah.
John Lynch.
I don't think so.
The Super Bowl run might actually help him a little bit.
That's what made me think about that. Yeah.
He was obviously good with Tampa Bay and
Denver.
He was with Denver.
Yeah.
Denver, wasn't he? Clay Matthews Sr.
I don't think so. Boy, I'm not putting many in there.
Well, let's see. You have
the two linemen.
You have the two linemen. That's it so far. Unless you want to count Rondé for this year.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Sam Mills. I don't even know who that is.
He was a middle linebacker for the Saints. Another one in the Hall of Very Good, but not a Hall of Famer.
Troy Polamalu.
Yes.
I agree. I think he's in.
Mm-hmm.
Illini great, Simeon Rice.
I don't think so.
I don't either. He had a great college career.
Yeah.
It was him and who was the other? Was it Kevin Hardy? Was that his name?
Yes.
At Illinois, they went
1 and 2, didn't they? Or 2 and 3?
I think it was 2 and 3 or 2 and 4, something like that. I don't know if they won many games with them back.
I was gonna say, how did they not win the national championship?
It's Illinois. It's what they do.
All right.
Richard Seymour.
Ooh. He's going to be in that 5 or 6 position too. Yeah.
He was super popular when he was with New England.
Yeah.
You look at his numbers though.
I know.
And they aren't that great, but he was the edge setter on that great Patriots dynasty in the 2000s. That if you're on a team that wins a bunch,
right,
you're likely going to get in. This is an interesting one from a special team standpoint. Steve Tasker.
Yeah. They don't really have a special teams guy in the Hall of Fame other than your kicker and punter, of which there's only 2 or 3 of those. So I'm going to say no. But, yeah, he was a good player. It will be interesting someday when this Matthew Slater comes up for New England.
He's been there forever.
Yeah.
Fred Taylor, we just mentioned him.
No, he was good, though.
I'm actually surprised he's on this 15 list.
He's probably the easiest to say no to.
Zach Thomas.
I don't think so, Josh. I know he's a
either.
Dolphin. He was a good player.
I'm hoping so. He's a 7-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. He was probably my favorite player growing up, but I don't think this is the first time he's ever been in the top 15. He's been in the other one for I don't know how long he's been out. He's been out 10 years at least.
Right.
Hope he gets in one day, but it's likely not going to be this year.
I don't think so either.
Hines Ward. Can't believe he's been out that long for one.
Yeah, I don't think he's got. If not yet, he's got over 1,000 catches and he's got a couple Super Bowl rings.
I think he will get on there eventually.
Yeah, I do too.
He was uber popular with Pittsburgh and he won 2 championships with them.
So right now, receivers, you have Isaac Bruce, you have Torrey Holt, you have Hines Ward, and then there's a 4th guy,
Reggie Wayne.
Yeah, I think Reggie's going to make it. But, he's really just kind of a taller Hines Ward.
That's fair.
His possession. In my opinion, Andrew Luck's worst pass as a Colt was the one that derailed his career. He was getting sacked one time, and he threw a lob up, and it was only an 8-yard pass I'll never forget, and Reggie came back to get it, and he tore his Achilles. Yeah. It was an easy touchdown, too, and Luck was getting hit while he threw it, and Wayne came back, but he was never the same. So I think Wayne gets in of the 4. I think Holt and Bruce kind of work off each other a little bit. But one of those 4 will make it between Ward, Bruce, Holt, and Wayne.
That's a tough one. Reggie Wayne was obviously really good. He wouldn't be on this list if he wasn't.
Right.
I don't think he makes it this year, but will in the next 2 or 3 years.
I think this is his 3rd time, maybe. Second or 3rd time, yeah. And to your point, he was never the number 1 guy. Mm-hmm. And Colts offense, much like the Rams offense too. I mean, they were just so prolific playing indoors. Right. They set, numbers that are hard to duplicate.
This is an interesting one. Patrick Willis.
Yeah.
He had his career cut short
due to
injury.
Yeah, he's going to be very much like what's going to happen to Luke Kuechly in a few years, you know. I think Luke actually played a year longer than Patrick did. He was the most feared linebacker in his time.
Right, he was dominant.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a smaller class. They've been taking 7. I think they're going to take 5 because there's a lot of really good players, but there's no – I think Polamalu is probably this closest as being he's in.
I think on this list he is the only lock.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you can argue for a bunch of them. Like I don't see Zach Thomas. I don't see Fred Taylor. I don't see Sam Mills.
There's also Ricky Waters on this list. I kind of glossed over.
Yeah. Yeah, Ricky's not going to make it.
Nah.
He did have over 10,000 yards rushing. He did have 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. But he was in a college backfield with him, Jerome Bettis, and Rick Meyer, who was Rookie of the Year and then faded away to obscurity. But yeah, I don't think Ricky's making it.
No. Darren Woodson.
No.
Nah, I wouldn't. I don't know. A lot of these guys that get into the media, it seems like they have a leg up because the media is the one kind of votes on it, isn't it? Or is that just baseball that does that?
No, it's football too.
So I think he has a leg up in that. I mean, he was a good defensive back, but I wouldn't say he's a Hall of Famer.
No.
Last one, Bryant Young.
Another Notre Dame boy.
He was a Niner, wasn't he?
He was. No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
Like I said, a couple of linemen, Polamalu, one of the receivers, maybe 2. Maybe they'll go 2 of them. But like you said, not a surefire first ballot, no-brainer. Those are coming up soon, too.
Right. Have they announced all the Centennial slate, or do they do that at the same? Because I know Jimmy Johnson and
Bill Cowher
were a Centennial, but I didn't see any for players or anything.
Just Harold Carmichael's the only one I saw.
Oh, that's the only one. Okay.
I know of.
The only one. Well, Roger Craig, he was a good running back.
Yeah.
He's actually from Davenport, Iowa. Shout out to Davenport, Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
Alex Karras, who Ted Karras, who's starting offensive lineman for the Patriots and former Illini. It would be his, I don't know, uncle, grandfather. He had so many relatives play in the NFL.
He's also the adopted parent of Webster on the TV show Webster.
That was him.
And he did Monday Night Football. He did Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles is hilarious.
Got kicked out of the NFL for a year for gambling. Him and Paul Hornung in 1963. The Golden Boy. Yeah. So they Pete Rosed it that year.
Just that year though. They didn't give him a lifetime ban.
1 year ban.
Should Pete Rose be a Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good enough.
Yeah.
I guess.
What he did probably wasn't even as bad as what these Astros were doing a few weeks ago.
Exactly.
So
I'm surprised a guy like A.J. Hinch only got a year suspension. I'm surprised no players gotten any.
Oh, I know.
They said the reason why they haven't is because they were fully cooperative and got pretty much full immunity, which I don't think that's fair because they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's
we've talked about it for 3 weeks and kind of sick of it, but at the same time, still.
Yeah, it's just it's annoying.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears here. Actually, you know what? Sticking with baseball for just one quick note. The Cubs, because they have no money, according to Thomas Ricketts, have let Nick Castellanos, fan favorite after only being there 2 months, walk and sign a multi-year deal with the Reds. So Cubs Twitter, at least, was not very happy today.
Did they even make a competitive offer?
Nah, I don't even think they really even talked to him. They're interested in Scooter Gennett, a grown man named Scooter. That moves the needle. Second baseman.
He was the only hitter worth watching the Cubs the last 6 weeks of the year. Right. He kind of single-handedly kept them in for a little bit, and then the last 2 weeks is pure.
He was the only one that really actually showed some fire. Mm-hmm. Of course, Rizzo hurt his ankle and came back a few days later, which helped. And they lost Javi Baez to a thumb injury.
Right.
But Nick Castellanos loved playing at Wrigley Field, loved playing in front of Cubs fans. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for them to get to the postseason.
Right.
I will look back on the Cubs in 2019 as favorably as I do the 2004 Cubs, where they were up, 2.5 games in the wild card entering the last week of the year and somehow finished two or 3 games out. Just choked against a bad Mets and bad Reds team. That's how favorably I will look upon this last year's Cubs team. But anyway, let's switch to some college basketball. You're a Purdue grad.
I am.
Talk a little bit about their week this week. Preferably, I just want to hear your thoughts on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I've avoided this since I've been over here, but it was pretty apparent early that the 3 best players on the court all were on the same team, and they weren't on my Boilers. And interesting enough, I did pick Illinois to win the Big Ten at my fantasy draft. And And at that point, they had not been playing very good. You know, they'd had to screw up against Miami, and they
lost to Missouri.
Who was it? Took them to overtime at home early in the year.
Nichols,
State. Yeah. But I thought they had the best tandem of guards in the Big Ten, and Frazier all of a sudden as playing like one of them in the last 3 or 4 games. And what they could do against Purdue is they could pack the 3-point line. We're not worried about anybody blowing past them because Purdue is not quick of foot, and they're probably the only Big Ten team that can actually out physical the Purdue big guy Williams in Coburn. So it was a perfect defensive strategy, and you looked at it and said that makes perfect sense because Purdue actually hit 3 of the 7 threes they took, but they were never open for them.
No.
And Williams scored a couple buckets early, but Io took over the game, particularly when Illinois made a couple mistakes and got down to 8 or 9 with about 6 minutes to go. And he took the kind of shots you dream of if you're a defense, 15-foot. Well, unfortunately, that's his game.
That's a shot. Yeah.
So that's what you want most of your guys to shoot. You don't want them shooting threes. You don't want them to have layups. But and Frazier was on fire early, and I thought both teams played poorly in the first half. Illinois plays very aggressive. They foul quite a bit.
They actually have the best foul rate in the conference this year.
They do?
Yeah.
They fouled a lot in the first half.
Yes,
at
they did. They did, and they turned it over quite a bit. Too.
But unlike the last couple of years where they forced tons of turnovers but gave up a ton of easy baskets, I noticed in the 2 games Illinois played this week, they gave up 6 turnovers and 2 turnovers and beat 2 teams on the road. And Purdue and Michigan aren't great teams, but they are tough to beat at their respective places. So I actually had Illinois down as the team of the week in the Big Ten. Actually, I think I have Maryland down as second best team of the week because they won 2 road games, even though one of them was just, I think, Northwestern. Or was it?
They got down 14 at half and came back and won.
Which is pretty impressive. And then they were all-time great the first 12 minutes against Indiana, and you knew that wasn't going to last. But then they got down. They were 6 points down with 1:08 to go and ended up winning in regulation. And Sticks got a little bit hot with the IU crowd. I don't know if you saw that.
I actually didn't see it, and I saw he apologized on Twitter today.
Turgeon about ripped his head off.
That's what Tanner said.
Well, there was some comments, I guess, coming from the student body, and they have been known to do that a couple times. Matt Harms took a little bit of heat last year there, and I guess Xavier Tillman did on earlier in the week. But that was a big win for Maryland. Indiana was about to have a fantastic week. You know,
they would have been ranked today.
Yeah,
they would have
absolutely
finished that one off.
Absolutely. And you know, and the one thing Indiana, I sometimes compare Purdue and Indiana. Indiana had been 5-0 in games that were decided in the last 30 seconds. They beat Nebraska in overtime. They beat Northwestern late. They beat Connecticut late. They beat Notre Dame late. So they were winning and Michigan State, and then they finally lose one. You know, whereas Purdue is 2-4 in games decided in the last 30 seconds. You know, your whole season can change sometimes in how you handle the last 30 seconds of a game. So I don't know what, you know, Josh, I kind of have tiers of the Big Ten. I think there is now a top tier, and it's Illinois. I think Michigan State's a little below Illinois. But I also think Iowa and Maryland, those 4 teams seem to be at the halfway point, the 4 interesting teams in the Big Ten. And I wouldn't have said that about Maryland until this last week. Now that they won 2 road games, you know, they do have they're very tough at home. Somebody knocked them off there, though, last week. Was it Wisconsin or somebody went into Maryland, I thought, and won?
That's what I thought, too.
But it wasn't this week. It was the week before.
I actually think they're undefeated at home.
Really?
Them and Rutgers are the only two.
Well, and then the second tier I have down, I thought was kind of interesting, and it's the who knows. It's Penn State and Rutgers.
Yeah.
Both of them are very physical. Penn State is probably the most senior-dominated team. I mean, they got Watkins and Jamar Stevens, who have both played Lamar. Yeah, what is it, Jamar? Lamar. You know, they've been 4-year starters. Mm-hmm. Both of them are coached by guys that are just gritty.
Yeah.
And they're the tier 2, but you don't know. You know, the culture hasn't been there. Tier 3 are the teams that I think are who knows. And that's where I have Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, and Indiana. They're all pretty good at home. They're not so good on the road. The two teams that are so far a disappointment are Michigan and Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And then the bottom tier, Northwestern, Nebraska. But, don't sleep on Nebraska either.
Right,
or Northwestern. They're playing better.
They're playing. They've taken. They lost by 5 to Michigan State, 4 to Illinois.
Right.
What was it, 4 to Indiana?
And Illinois was actually at Illinois.
Mm-hmm. And at Indiana, they only lost.
Yeah, that's true.
3 or 4. And then up 14 at home against Maryland. They were tied against Ohio State with.
But if your team goes in there and loses, it's a bad loss.
A real bad loss.
Yeah.
There's no way to really spin it as something other than that.
They had
same with Nebraska. I know they're playing better. I mean, they took Rutgers to the wire on.
They should have had that game.
Really, I didn't watch the.
They were up 6 with 3 minutes to go.
Yikes.
And Geo Baker hit a step back 3 at the buzzer, or 1 second to go. But Nebraska's already beaten Iowa and Purdue at home. They'll probably get 1 or 2 more at home because I think Hoiberg's a pretty darn good coach.
I agree.
You know, they only have 1 guy back from last year's team. And
the fact they're even competitive is pretty incredible, especially early where they took Indiana to overtime and then beat Purdue pretty handily at home.
Yeah. Yeah, they got out to a 14-0 start, and I don't know. Michigan, we were talking about, they're in a tough stretch, and they got Xavier Simpson out suspended against Nebraska coming up Wednesday.
Where's that game at?
At Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then they took one of their 10 home games and decided to award their fans in New York with a game at Madison Square Garden against, of all teams, Rutgers, who that's kind of the New York City team.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, Rutgers is going to have 11 home games, and Michigan's going to have 9. Because to me, Rutgers, they'll have that crowd.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you witnessed
when they were horrid.
Beat Indiana in the Big Ten tournament.
And took what I think was Purdue's best team in the last 10 years. And if Carson Edwards hadn't gone nuts, Purdue was gone. Because Geo Baker and, Sanders
Corey
kid?
Sanders.
Oh, my God. They both had 30. And they electrified that crowd. But, just when you think Rutgers should have never been invited to the Big Ten, they threw out a pretty nice team. I think they're very well coached.
And their football's kind of turning too with Greg Schiano.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
They're actually not a pushover anymore.
Right. What do you think about Ohio State?
Ohio State desperately needed that game at Northwestern yesterday, and they got it. I think their schedule lighten up a little bit?
Is there a light schedule?
There's really not. There's 12 teams that could make the NCAA tournament,
right?
And a lot of people have at least 11 in. Right. I don't think that many get in.
No. I think between this tier I said of Wisconsin, Purdue, Minnesota, and Indiana, maybe 2 of those make it.
Mm-hmm.
But Michigan and Ohio State can obviously move up to that,
right.
And right now they have both those teams in. But Ohio State, we thought it was unbelievable because they beat North Carolina. Well, that didn't. But they did beat Gonzaga, right?
Yes, the next day.
And Michigan had a couple nice wins early in the year. I think also North Carolina, right?
North Carolina and Gonzaga. That's who beat.
Oh, Michigan did.
Michigan did. Ohio State beat Kentucky.
Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got some nice wins. But it's interesting when they do these net 50s, and Indiana's not up at all.
No.
And so I heard him say on TV yesterday that from this point forward, Indiana has the toughest schedule in the country, which I don't know. I think they only play Illinois once.
They do. It's in Champaign, though.
They've got to go to Breslin Center. They've got to go to, Mackey, but, I mean, that's – in this it's not that big a deal, but that's hard to win there. They've already played Maryland, so I don't know.
They have to go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
They have to do that.
Yeah.
They had Rutgers this.
They got to go to
week.
They got to go to the barn.
Okay,
that's no picnic, and I think they have to go to Iowa.
About to Penn State.
Yep.
As well. Hmm.
And that's the one thing as a Purdue fan. You're asking me 11-9, 4-5, but they're done with Illinois, Tier 1 team. They're done with Michigan State, Tier 1 team. They're done with Maryland. So, but Iowa, I don't know where. I have them up there just because they score so well, but we'll see. We'll see.
Honestly, as for Illinois, they're playing obviously better than anyone in the conference. They've won 6 in a row conference games, which is the first time they've done that since the 2004-2005 team.
Wow!
And this is the farthest into the season they've been, at least yesterday before the Michigan State game. Furthest into the season they've been number 1 in the Big Ten since 2006. This team won a ton, or this school, I should say, won a ton back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. They haven't really done a whole lot since, so
yeah,
I'm feeling pretty dang good right now.
Oh yeah, they're and they've won some tight games, and you have to,
right?
Northwestern, Rutgers,
that was a close
and then
one.
Obviously Michigan
And Wisconsin. They won by 1, which is just great to see them find ways to win those kind of games, because the first 2 years under Underwood, of course, they were really young. They would find ways to lose. I mean, I don't know if you remember his first year, the first time they ever did the 2 Big Ten games early in December, was they had to go to Northwestern when they played at that neutral court because their court wasn't done. Then at home against Maryland, I think they lost by 1 at Northwestern, even though they had the ball with no shot clock on or anything and had a turnover.
Yeah.
And then they were up 2 against Maryland with the ball and 4 seconds left, and DeMonte Williams threw it out of bounds.
Oh, yeah.
And
all the way to the other end.
All the way to the other end, so they got it right under the basket. I think Herter missed a 3, but then that big guy they had who's with the Hawks now.
Fernando?
Bruno Fernando had a tip in at the buzzer to tie it, and then they end up winning in overtime.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I've become accustomed to the past couple years. But
and that's what the Big Ten is this year. It's because I obviously the game I got to see Michigan State play, I can't imagine a top 10 team ever playing worse than that. They couldn't. It was Mackey. They could not make a basket. You wanted to say your defense was great and stuff. They really have 2 main options, and they got a couple young guys who are going to be good. I think one's name's Brown.
Gabe Brown.
He's going to be good, and they got this Bingham that's tall and skinny. He's going to be good, but if Winston, who, in my opinion, Tanner said that you thought he was a Big Ten Player of the Year. I do not think he is at this point. At Mackey, he had 9 turnovers and 6 points. Then he turns around and has 6 points and 4 assists the next game, and then even the game against Indiana, he missed 2 or 3 free throws late. He's really good, and he probably will be in consideration, but I just don't think he's having as good a senior season as they thought he would.
It's kind of funny you bring that up, because I actually saw numbers from 4 or 5 guys over the past 6 since Illinois' win streak, and Ayo Dosunmu is actually, I think, 2nd in the Big Ten in scoring behind Garza, who's just been insane this year.
Yeah. Well, those are probably, in my opinion, the 2 guys right now that are out in front for the Big Ten Player of the Year. But Winston's going to get, especially if Michigan State does end up winning.
And even a guy who's on not as good of a team, but still a decent team in Minnesota, Daniel Oturu is having a great year. And I think he actually might end up jumping after this year, which I'm actually going to talk about that if I can find the paper.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did with it, though. I might have left it upstairs.
Well, I know the ones Tanner thought might jump, he had Kofi, Coburn, and Ayo from your school.
I think one of those guys does, and it's Ayo. I think Kofi's back. I just don't see him in today's NBA. Now, 15, 20 years ago, I think he's a
The problem is you can't see him in the NBA 2 years from now either. I mean, he's not going to do anything.
That's a good point.
Jalen Smith will probably jump.
Yeah, I think he's gone.
Boy, he had a game yesterday.
Yeah.
Garza,
I just don't see him in the NBA either.
I don't
He's
either.
He's be a senior next year. So you might as well just come back, I guess.
Yeah, if he really likes college, and Iowa will be loaded next year. Kriener's the only senior they got that's worth the darn.
Yep.
And Bohannon, if he came back anywhere near where he was, Bohannon could probably go in this best clutch player ever with Brady. Last year, you remember he had 2 or 3 games in a row. He nailed it 3 at the buzzer. I don't. Do you think Trace Jackson leaves early?
I think he does.
Really? Do you think he's that good?
I don't know if he's that good. I mean, he's pretty good. They need to
He's
give
quick.
him the ball more. He's athletic.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, he's the type of guy that NBA GMs can dream on.
Yeah.
And take, I don't know, early 20s maybe.
Yeah. And they don't need to play him for a year or two.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. He's got a body on him, and he's an athlete, whereas Luka Garza is just all skill.
He's your prototypical 4-year college player, gets better every single year.
He plays a lot like that best guy at the park. Where he's going up and under and stuff. Can't jump a lick.
And he doesn't look like a basketball player yet. He's just whooping everyone out there. It's
impressive. Tanner listed all the seniors, and there aren't hardly any team. Each team has about 2 seniors. The 2 kids for Illinois, neither one start. They're both good players, Felice and Nichols.
Andres Felice saved them at Michigan.
Yeah.
Frazier had 4 fouls.
Yeah.
And Felice went through a stretch where he scored, I think, 12 of their 18, just to kind of keep them afloat in the second half.
Right.
Then, of course, Io did what Io does.
IU's got Green and Davis. Green's kind of their 6th guy. Davis is like their 9th guy.
Devontae Green's a roller coaster.
He is. When he's on, IU could probably beat anybody, but when I've seen more games because he's my fantasy guard, my number 3 pick, where he'll come in and Indiana's got a 10-point lead and he takes 2 bad shots and gets the ball stripped.
I think he did that yesterday, jacked up a 3 with 15 seconds left in the shot clock.
Yeah, but I remember, I'll never forget the Big Ten tournament last year. Ohio State was up 20 with 6 minutes to go, and he got rocking hot. He reminds me of a poor man's Carson Edwards.
Yeah.
He takes the same dang shots Carson did, but he's probably not. Well, he's not as good. Let's put it that way. And then we went to Illinois and Indiana. Purdue's got 2, and this Jihad Proctor has not worked out at all. And Boudreaux, I mean, he's a nice kid. He's really smart. He played really well against Wisconsin, so 10 points and 13 rebounds. And he played good at against Michigan State. But for the most part, he's not helped them either.
Tanner told me we need to talk about Butler and Notre Dame real quick.
Yep.
We'll actually get to them once we start picking games. We have about 7.5 minutes left, so I'll just pick and choose a few games to go through. Tonight, Wisconsin at Iowa.
Iowa.
I agree. Michigan at Nebraska tomorrow night.
I am going with Nebraska in an upset.
I agree. No Simpson. He is by far their most important player.
Yep.
He's their facilitator. I assume Livers isn't going to play.
He got re-hurt again, didn't he?
Yeah, it was the same groin issue.
Oh, boy. Yeah. And that's hurt him.
Yeah. That's killed him. They've lost, I think, 5 of 6 or 6 of 7.
Yeah. And the one they had was Purdue in double overtime. I mean, they could be on a 7-game losing streak.
It'll be interesting once who's their assistant that was at
Martelli?
Yeah, Martelli, because I think he's doing the bulk of the coaching. Yeah. I'm not sold on Howard. I used to be 2 months ago, but
I agree.
Purdue at Rutgers.
I'm going to pick Purdue in an upset. They're due for one road win somewhere over someone decent, but Rutgers is tough. They're physical.
I 100% agree with you. I think Purdue goes in there. For some reason, I just feel like they're going to shoot lights out on the road.
Well, lights out could be 40% for them.
That's a good point. Sasha needs to get hot.
Rutgers has never beat Purdue since they've been in the Big Ten.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of 2 schools they've never beat. So.
They've beaten Illinois once, and it kept Illinois out of the tournament last game of the year.
Well, they beat a great Wisconsin team a few years ago with Comiskey and that whole group.
Yeah. Indiana at Penn State.
I think Penn State's a tough place to play. I'm picking Penn State, but I think it'll be a really good game.
I'm picking Penn State as well in a close one.
Indiana's getting better. Mm-hmm. They've got good players.
Iowa at Maryland.
I think Maryland. Iowa's got to prove to me that they can go on the road too.
I'm actually picking Iowa in an upset. Maryland's due to lose a home game.
Yeah.
Indiana actually plays at Ohio State on Saturday.
Now, I think Indiana will split this